Whenever we hear the word war on anything, I think it should alert our antenna.
But what is meant by war on drugs? That's a very good question.
The war on marijuana is a symptom of something that's fundamentally wrong in this country.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one in the United States, the problem of dangerous drugs.
The only way marijuana can kill you is you take 25 pounds of it and you throw it out of a CIA drug plane and it hits you in the head. That's how you die from marijuana.
We have to break out of the fog because the media won't do anything. No president's going to come in and change things.
You're supposed to question authority as a journalist. That's the whole point of the media.
Tell another grown human being. Oh, not allowed that. A grown man.
It's not rational or logical, it's financial.
It's interesting when you look at the amount of money that these drugs are generating. Where does that money go? And who's handling it?
The entire underpinnings of the war on drugs are being pulled away.
And what we see now is this culture struggling to make an accommodation for this new kid on the block.
I suffer from an extremely rare type of muscular dystrophy, and I have to take medication or I'll die. Right now I weigh less than 80 pounds. I have all my life. I have support of 5 of my doctors saying that I am living proof that medical marijuana works. I am completely against legalizing it for everyone, but there is medical purpose for it.
And you have synthetic marijuana that's available and other pain medications.
It makes me sick. I have tried it and it makes me throw up. I have tried all the medications there are and all the forms that come in, appetite stimulators or steroids. I have muscular dystrophy. That's completely against my DNA.
I'm sorry to hear that.
My question for you is, will you arrest me and my doctors if I get medical marijuana prescribed?
I'm not in favor of medical marijuana being
So will
legal
you
in the
have
country.
me arrested?
How are you?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Will you please answer my question?
Well, you have. Wait, are you not going to answer his question, Governor?
I think I have. I'm not.
No, he asked you if you were going to arrest. He asked if you were going to arrest patients like him, Governor. You're going to just ignore a person in a wheelchair?
I spoke with him.
Hi, my name is Clayton Holton, and first of all, I'd like to thank you for ending the federal raids against medical marijuana patients like myself. I have recently asked Rudy Giuliani and Mitt Romney about the subject, and instead of answering my questions, they turned their backs to me. I was wondering if you could tell me how you are a better candidate for the medical marijuana patients like myself.
I would absolutely never use the federal government to enforce the law against anybody using marijuana. There's a couple reasons for that. We talk about medical marijuana, and as a physician, it's controversial in conventional medicine. I happen to believe that it's probably very, very helpful, and I'll bet you there's a few testimonials for that. But even in the legislative sense, in the political sense, the federal government doesn't have this authority. I mean, if a state especially comes in and says that you can use it, like some of these states have, then for the federal government to come in and say that we are going to override the state law, even if it's just a modest legalization, and override this law, that's an offense, on just on the issue of states' rights. But how can people do this? How can an individual talk to you like that and just say, well, I'm a compassionate conservative. I want you to suffer. That's what they're saying. You know, it's outrageous. And they don't know the history. How long has this war on drugs been going on? Essentially since the early 70s. The first marijuana laws were passed in 1938, and they knew they weren't allowed to outlaw it, so they passed a huge tax on marijuana. And even the war on drugs is total war on drugs is rather recent. You know, think of all the respect that they had for the Constitution in, I guess, 1919 when they wrote a prohibition against alcohol. They knew they had to change the Constitution. And then they repealed it because it didn't work. But all this drug war business is done without authority. It's sort of obvious that they don't have the authority to do this. We have probably spent $500 or more billion since the early 70s. What do we do with individuals Let's say an individual that never committed a violent crime gets caught 3 times in a nonviolent act of using drugs, even if they were hard drugs and even if they hurt the individual, they can be put in prison for life.
Federal agents in Spokane raided several medical marijuana dispensaries today, enforcing federal law that makes selling or possessing marijuana illegal. But for some families, that drug is a godsend in treating a variety of diseases. 2-year-old Cash Hyde was diagnosed last year with a stage 4 brain tumor. He nearly died more times than his family can count and was miserable from the high-dose chemo coursing through his tiny body until his dad turned to a controversial place and gave cannabis to his young son. KXLY4's Melissa Luck is here, been working on this story.
Yeah, controversial, Robin, is an understatement. Medical marijuana is a political football both here in Washington and in Cashie's home state of Montana. But his father said to me, when your child is dying of cancer, you'll do anything you can to help. His choice defied doctors, but he says saved Cashie's life.
June 21st, 2008 is a day Mike and Callie Hyde will never forget.
He was just a healthy little boy, born there in Missoula.
Cash Michael Hyde's very first birthday, a family now complete. They never could have imagined the journey little Cashie's life would take.
He was just your average, happy little kid, and then he just started to get sick.
It was shortly before Cashie's second birthday when Dad Mike knew something wasn't right.
Well, he started being very tired, sleeping a lot, very cranky. He started to throw up. We started taking him to the doctor, and the doctor would tell us that he had mono.
For 6 weeks, it was the same diagnosis over and over, but Mike refused to accept what doctors were telling him. He knew, like any parent would, that something was terribly wrong.
I was like, it feels like he's dying in my arms. We need to take him somewhere else, you know, and so we took him to the ER, and that's when they did a CAT scan on him, and they found a 4.5 centimeter tumor in his brain. They loaded him up, and they were gone to Salt Lake City within a matter of a couple hours of finding the tumor.
At Salt Lake's Primary Children's Hospital came the devastating news. Their little boy was facing incredible odds. Brain surgery revealed a peanut tumor wrapped around Cashie's optic nerve.
When we arrived in Salt Lake in May, Cashie was so sick that, I mean, his eye was starting to get pushed out. He was sleeping 16 to 18 hours a day. He was vomiting. He was pretty much as sick as, you know, you can get without being, you know, on your deathbed.
Doctors cut into Cashie's brain to remove what they could, only about 10% of the tumor. The Hydes could only hope aggressive treatment could get the rest. 3 rounds of chemo followed by stem cell rescue, then 3 rounds of high-dose chemo after that. A difficult treatment plan for anyone, so imagine what it did to a 2-year-old kid.
So the first night of chemo, we did 10 hours worth of seizures down in the ICU. And, you know, the doctors told us then he could have brain damage from these seizures. We don't know where it's going to be in the morning, just going to have to wait and find out.
Cashie spent his second birthday in a hospital bed, swollen and sick from the medication intended to save his life. Doctors were uncertain he would make it to his 3rd birthday.
It's overwhelming, I guess, to say the least, and we had a lot of scary things happen in June. He got a blood infection, went into septic shock, went to the ICU, ended up coding, and they had to resuscitate him. I was standing like 2 feet away. I had to watch the whole thing. There was a lot of days we were getting told we weren't going to beat it. You know, you're not going to take him home. He is going to die. And those are the days where you really got to really believe.
They believed and they prayed. High-dose chemo was killing his cancer, but it was making Cashie sicker than ever. He was taking 120 milligrams a day of 5 different drugs to try to make him comfortable. But that, Mike said, wasn't helping ease Cashie's pain.
That's going to help get the tape off. I'm going to hold this, okay?
By the end of September, he had gone 40 days without eating. He was vomiting 9 to 10 times a day. He couldn't lift his head off his pillow. He was literally laying there shivering in his bed. And the doctors came in, and I said, is there anything we can do for Cash?
The doctors had no answers, so Mike found his own. Relief in the form of a controversial oil, cannabis, illegal for you and I to possess, and something Cashie's doctors wouldn't even discuss. Mike got authorization to give Cashie the oil, and without telling them why, he told the doctors to wean Cashy off the nausea cocktail. Inserted through Cashy's feeding tube, a tiny amount of oil replaced all those drugs. The result, Mike says, was almost immediate.
You're watching a kid that hasn't had the will to eat in 4 months, 5 months, actually take a bite of something. He hadn't eaten a thing in 40 days, and it was really incredible just to watch him take a bite of a piece of cheese, you know. It's showing that he wants to live.
There you go.
Cashy did his last round of high-dose chemo with no anti-nausea drugs. Mike says the doctors told him they were amazed. Mike never told them why.
I wanted to tell him, hey, he's on cannabis oil, but I was afraid they would take it away from him.
We wanted to tell you about the side effects, the possible dangers of giving medical marijuana to a kid as young as Cashy. But even though it's perfectly legal in Washington and in his home state of Montana, we couldn't get a single doctor to talk to us on camera. That's how we ended up here at the THC clinic in East Spokane.
And I see a lot of folks, and they come in from all walks of life and say they receive benefit.
Sherry Allen is a nurse practitioner from Oregon. She comes to Spokane every couple of weeks to evaluate medical marijuana patients and sign off on their permits.
What I try to do here at this office is create an atmosphere that is truly medical, because I do believe that cannabis is a medical, and we are trying to use it as a medicine.
She believes in the power of this drug and its benefit for cancer patients. She signs off sometimes on 50 patients a day. Then I asked her about authorizing marijuana for kids.
It is not common, okay? And I'm not going to say whether or not I've authorized for a child.
It's a typical answer, as doctors are concerned about federal law and company policies. But Mike Hyde doesn't care about the controversy or about the political battle over this drug. He cares that his son survived and is convinced not only did the cannabis oil make Cashy feel better, it prevented long-term damage to his organs. For Mike, the living proof is in this vibrant 2-year-old boy.
Yeah, it's very controversial, it's very scary, but there's nothing more scary than about losing your child.
The story, Michael.
Well, that's right, Harold. He's an immigrant from Honduras who never went to school, college, or medical school. Yet the man known as Dr. Sebi claims to have found the cure for several life-threatening diseases, including AIDS. Too good to be true? Well, you be the judge. The lump in Myrtle Rick's left breast is gone.
I haven't had any symptoms or problems, anything.
Sabrina Peterson's son no longer disabled by sickle cell anemia.
He has a lot of energy. I have to make him rest.
Disease is cured by this man. His name is Dr. Sebi, but he won't find a medical degree hanging from his wall. Instead, a certificate of healing.
We have complex things with science, but if we go back to God and use the herbs as God said, then you can see how simple it is.
Dr. Sebi believes what ails you can be cured with natural alkaloid herbs and a vegetarian diet solely made up of what he calls electric foods, mushrooms, greens, and rye breads without starch.
Hippocrates established the principle of medical science by using herbs to cure diseases, then why the physician using the chemicals?
40 years ago, a doctor in Mexico cured Sebi of diabetes, asthma, and obesity with the very same herbs and diet he dispenses to all of his patients, whether they're suffering from lack of energy or full-blown AIDS.
That package is an intracellular chelation. I'm removing plaque from the system. I'm removing inflammation. That is the base for all disease.
And according to a medical affidavit provided by Dr. Sebi, it's working. It shows a patient diagnosed with HIV in November of 1993 was cured 2 months later. Thousands of patients worldwide swear by his methods and natural herbal medicines.
In the tiny village, Lisa sought guidance for body and soul from an herbal guru named Dr. Sebi.
Dr. Sebi, according to him, can cure anything. Everything from trying to lose weight to, looking for a cure for AIDS. People go there with hopes and dreams that Dr. Sebi can somehow save them.
She had been through so many intense problems in her career and in her life and in her personal life that she didn't know where to turn. And this doctor, she said, had shown her how to really open up and cleanse all of the negativity out of her.
She told me she was suffering with alcoholism and that she was smoking excessively, cigarettes, drinking and smoking. She asked me, what do I need to do to stay on the side of peace? I said, fast, do what Jesus did. She said, what did Jesus do? He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights.
Midway through her 40-day ordeal, an obviously gaunt Lisa spoke with MTV News.
I've been polluting my body for 30 years. 40 days is not a long time to me to fast. 40 days represents overcoming death. It's the number of days that Jesus fasted for, and I kind of feel like I'm on a journey sometimes. Don't really know quite where I'm headed.
At the ending of the fasting, she came to me. I heard the door opening at 2 o'clock in the morning. She said, I completed my fast this morning. I said, what did you see? I saw God. She said, I'm going to make you famous. I said, how? Because I'm going to talk about you. Does everyone know you cure AIDS and cancer?
There's just a lot of people in the world who are suffering. They're sick. They're not happy. They're looking for answers. They don't know where to turn. Well, I know a man who's been curing AIDS since 1987. This guy has taught me a lot, and I need to share my knowledge, with the world.
This evening on the Rock Newman Show, herbalist Dr. Sebi has worked with Michael Jackson and Lisa Left Eye Lopes, and he says his line of cell food cures everything from chapped skin to AIDS. He'll talk about his life growing up in Honduras to winning a case before the New York Supreme Court. That's coming up on the Rock Newman Show. In the opening of this show, I talked about you having worked with Michael Jackson.
Yes.
Can you tell us about how that came about and what kind of work you did with him?
I was home a Sunday afternoon in Los Angeles on La Cienega. Somebody threw a rock at my window. When I looked outside, it was Randy. Well, I had known Randy over the years, Randy Jackson.
Yes.
Michael Jackson brother.
Mm-hmm.
So he came upstairs. What's it? My brother want to see you. I said, who? Michael. Michael? Michael want to see me? I'm the least of the individual that people want to see. I'm at the bottom of the totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
I went to see him. And he said he was in agreement with me traveling with him. And I told him that I would be able to help him.
Yeah.
He couldn't sleep. He was in a very bad emotional state.
What time frame, what time period was this? Do you remember?
2004.
Okay.
I was with him from February until September.
Of 2004.
At the ending of September, I told him, I said, you're singing, you feel good, you're looking good, I'm leaving. He said, don't leave me. I said, why? He said, I want you by my side, but I have a business to build. Yeah. But I love Michael. Michael, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful brother.
What did you do for him?
What I did for him was this. I gave Michael an intracellular chelation. An intracellular chelation means that I'm going to clean every cell that makes up every organ that totals his biological structure. Because he was full of a whole lot of drugs, the pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah.
Couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
His nerve was shattered. So I began treating him.
Yeah.
And at the ending of the period, he was doing good, and I left.
Yeah. Okay, so let's deal with this, because there might be some folks out there that are looking in here and they're saying, well, how did you learn to do these things, one? And I would say, and I think we have something that we'll end up showing on the screen here, regarding in 1979, I think it was, you were charged in New York City with practicing medicine without a license. You were ultimately charged, indicted, and taken before the New York Supreme Court. And I would advise my viewers who might be questioning your authenticity that you won that case. Now, what were so the charge was practicing medicine without a license and claiming that you had a remedy to cure AIDS, cancer, and diabetes. So the question is, how did you win that case against what some people say are the toughest prosecutors in the land?
Well, it was 1987.
87, not 79, 87.
The 10th of February.
Okay.
My mother knew they were coming. When I told my mama that I had cured my 13 AIDS patient, she said, "They gonna get you. They gonna get you."
So let me stop you there. You said I cured my 13 AIDS patients.
Yeah.
So you had 13 patients
Yeah.
who had AIDS.
Yeah.
And then you say
you
cured them.
Sure.
Keep talking.
So my mother said, "They're gonna get you." I said, "But Mom, why are they gonna get me?" Because you must remember that you live in a society that support a certain philosophy and a certain system. You being the color that you are, black, and then you're going against the grain, they're gonna get you. So when I'm in my office on February the 10th, here come the detectives. You are charged with practicing medicine without a license, selling product not approved by the FDA, and claiming to cure AIDS and other diseases.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yes. Well, you are making a fraudulent claim. I asked the detective, how do you know that?
Because you were advertising in newspapers.
Of course. I advertised in the Village Voice, the Amsterdam News, and the New York Post.
And you were telling people through your advertising that you can cure
AIDS, sickle cell, lupus, herpes, blindness, diabetes, paralysis, and others.
Okay, so they come knocking on the door and
So knocked on my door and took me to jail. But the funny thing about it, I was happy. I was very, very, extremely happy. When everybody in my office was crying, I was happy because my mama told me they were coming. And I knew that I had sufficient evidence to prove my position. Not only scientifically, empirically, historically, and whatever way they would desire. So while I was in jail, I'm saying, I wonder what defense they would have against me.
Yeah.
I would like to know. But I didn't blame the Attorney General, Mr. Robert Abrams, because why should he accept from me the statement that I cure AIDS and sickle cell and blindness when no one else has ever made those claims? The man had a right to arrest me, but he was making a mistake. So I'm sitting in jail, and I'm happy. When I got out of jail and when I went in front of the judge, I asked 3 questions.
And they were?
They were, Your Honor.
You defended yourself?
Of course I did.
Okay.
Your Honor, is it a fact that the Holy Bible teaches that the herbs are for the healing of the nations? She said, yes. Is it a fact that science shows that the human body is carbon-based, and to complement a carbon-based body, you must have a carbon-based substance to complement it, because the body only accepts the substance through the process of chemical affinity. Chemical affinity is important. It's an electrical transfer. Chemical affinity.
Okay.
The body could only accept what it is made of, not something new or alien to it. Last question. Your Honor, is it a fact that the father of medicine, Mr. Hippocrates, the man that established the principle of medical science today, cured every disease known to man? Did he use herbs or chemicals? She said, herbs. I said, thank you very much. I rest my case.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I understood that the state were unprepared to defend itself. They were unprepared because in the past there was 2,781 cases that came before the Supreme Court and lost.
Yeah.
I won.
Yeah.
Not only did I prove scientifically, but I had the diagnostic sheets, and I do have them today. And those diagnostic sheets didn't come from me. They came from their school, their American accredited, medical accredited school.
Did I read it correctly where there was some requirement for you to actually bring patients, a patient into court from each of those maladies, and that you brought multiple patients in court who, one, testified themselves, and that you had medical records, one showing that they were victims of the disease, and then showing that it had been cured by one doctor, and then a second doctor verifying what the first doctor had said?
Yes. We have to remember this, that whenever you make a statement that goes against the grain, you better be prepared. You better be prepared. The judge said that I had to bring one of every patient that I had cured, and there was one that said others. The others was a man that came from Italy. He was paralyzed. But I was supposed to take 9. I took 77.
You took 77 patients in court with you?
That's correct. But I knew that my brain was not the same as your brain or any other brain, right? We're unique.
Yeah.
So when I make a statement, they're going to take my statement and pit it against philosophy. It doesn't fit. I represent an entity that isn't philosophical.
And that entity is?
Well, it is an African one. I'm an African. And we have to remember that. You see, we think that we could take a philosophy out of Europe or China and inculcate that into the African brain. It does not resonate. It cannot resonate. You cannot be yourself when you've been adulterated. Being that I am an African, I'm going to look at things the African way. And the African way seems to reduce things to the least common denominator. And guess what I found? That there's only one disease, not 2, not 3, 1. When I opened my big black mouth and told the judge that, oh my God. What did you say? I said, Your Honor, there's only one disease.
And what is
Could
that?
you substantiate that?
Okay.
Of course, I'm not going to just deploy a bunch of empty words. I represent a country. I represent a people. I represent a race. And I represent myself. I'm not going to undermine myself. There's only one disease. The judge said, what is it? I said, you already know. She said, try me. It was a woman, Ann Thelman. I said, Your Honor, when someone has sinusitis, what is obstructing the nasal passage? She said, mucus. And when another has bronchitis, what is obstructing the bronchial tubes? She said, mucus. And when another has pneumonia, what's covering the cells of the lungs? She said, mucus. Dr. Victor Herbert, who is defending the state of New York, jumped up and said, what about AIDS? You and your one disease theory? I said, Your Honor, this doctor is saying that I believe in a theory. I am the last individual on earth that could believe in a theory. I do not lend myself to theories or philosophy. Either I know or I don't know.
Okay.
He's talking about theories.
Yeah. You talking about the real deal.
I'm talking about reality, not theories, not philosophy.
So please share with this.
So she said, and what about AIDS?
Yeah.
said, well, he asked about what about AIDS? He want to know where the mucus. I said, Your Honor, have you been to an AIDS ward? She said, yes. I said, what is it that the AIDS spits up every 5 minutes? She said, mucus. Where is the mucus? It's in the skin, it's in the blood, and the lymphatic system that makes up the immunological system. That is where you find the mucus, Mr. Victor Herbert. How could you agree with, how could you disagree with truth? You see, what happened, I didn't go to school. I have never been to school. I have never attended any school, kindergarten, grade school, high school, or anything. But I had parents that kept me anchored to the African way, not to the Chinese way, not to the European way, not to the Japanese way. I am an African.
Were your patients all of color?
No, no. I have patients that are white. I have more white patients than I have black.
Okay, so this scourge that, you know, has just run rampant, you know, through the world, AIDS. Can you walk us through as much as you can a step-by-step process where you have a patient that has AIDS and you do XYZ or ABC, and then the patient no longer has AIDS? Can you walk us through that?
Of course. When the first patient was a brother in Boston named Michael White, and a sister, she's from D.C. Her name is, oh boy, I forgot her name right now.
Okay.
But she told me, she said, Dr. Sebi, my brother-in-law brother has AIDS in Boston. So what do you do? I said, well, I'm going to send him the compound. The compound that I made were made to cleanse the cells. They come in the category of phosphates, carbonates, iodides, and bromides. Now we are entering the science of biochemistry. These are food and vitalizers. I remove from the man's diet lactose, uric acid, and carbonic acid, milk, starches, and meat. By removing these things from his diet and then cleansing his cells, he began to see recovery in 24 hours. And so it went. They kicked him out of the hospital 2 weeks later. Memorial Hospital in Boston, Dr. Bonanno. Then there was a young man in D.C., Zelma Peterson is her name. Zelma Peterson. She was the one that introduced me to my second AIDS patient, and from then it was all the way alive.
Okay. Now, you have documented.
I got proof now.
You have proof.
Books with the documents in it, diagnostic sheets.
Yeah. And the medical world still puts out that you are a quack, you're a crazy man, you're not credentialed, and that you run scams on people. But you have documented proof of healing people. Now, I know that you have you reference a compound in Honduras. You also operate out of
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles also. So when you get a patient now, if you have a DC patient, does that DC patient need to go to LA or Honduras? Or?
No, we treat them. In fact, we send 1,000 packages a day throughout the world right now. Israel, Hong Kong, China, Russia. We have people in the village now from Russia. We have people from all over the world. We send packages all over the world. You don't have to even be in Honduras. But it is good to go to Honduras because the thermal waters are there. And they accelerate the process of healing. Once you immerse your body in it and you drink it.
You speak of Honduras.
Now, about the medical science saying that I'm a quack, I do not blame medical science for making that statement. Because my race has never done anything on that level of endeavor to express itself able to cure diseases on that level, in other words. So, sure, I'm a quack, but I don't care what they say. What I was concerned with, not medical science, because I know that they're the one that is violating. I am not the violator. Hippocrates did not establish the school of medicine by using chemicals, because the chemicals cannot assimilate. A chemical cannot assimilate with the human body. An herb can, because they are electrical.
Okay.
Herbs are electrical, and we have yet to understand that. I was concerned with the black leadership of America, not medical science. When I had cured these people of sickle cell and lupus and herpes and blindness, I was happy. I said, now I could go to all the leaders. I could go to Minister Farrakhan. I could go to Jesse Jackson. I could go to Al Sharpton. I could go to Oprah Winfrey. But what I found out, I was mistaken. I was wrong. They are not interested in the healing of any black people.
That's an explosive claim.
That is not an explosive statement. That is a reality. There isn't a black leader in America that is interested in the health of the black race.
Do you say that because they refuse to interact with you?
They are not in the position to respond. If they were, my first case of AIDS was cured in 1984. And since then, we've been curing people of lupus and herpes and cancer and blindness. And not one black leader ever said, well, let us help the brother.
That you just mentioned what some people in hushed tones refer to as the C word, cancer. I have friends right now that have been victimized by that scourge of a disease. Two fairly close to me who have been going through chemotherapy. We just recently had the lieutenant governor from the state of Maryland, and the governor of Maryland has cancer, and he's been going through chemotherapy treatments, and he talked about how devastating those treatments were. So you obviously don't treat with chemo. Why is it wrong for a cancer patient to be treated with chemotherapy?
Chemotherapy is an approach that destroys cells. Chemotherapy doesn't distinguish between good cells and bad cells. It destroys cells. It's an acid approach.
What kind of approach?
Acid.
Oh, acid approach, okay.
My approach is an intracellular cleansing. What causes disease in the first place? An acid condition. Well, let us sweep it out. Let us find the plants that are consistent with cleansing. You see, we just begin to wake up. We just begin to realize that we are way in a deep deficit.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that we have never spent time in analyzing or even trying to understand the difference in our genetic predisposition. We have never understood the science of biochemistry. All of the folks that have came to us, they came to us with history, bunch of history, a lot of religion, a lot of philosophy, but none of them came with a food that would help me to live as healthy as I possibly can. Look carefully. We're not going to make excuses no more. Because if we continue to make excuses, we're going to go deeper into the deficit. just recently a report came out that the Christian diet need to be examined, re-examined. Because in the Christian diet, you have people eating hog, potatoes, rice and beans. But if we take this substance to a biochemist, he's not going to find any food in any of these substances. So why do we eat these things? Then we get sick. I always use that black woman in the jungle. For some reason, she keeps showing up. This black woman in the jungle keeps showing up as setting the standards and raising the bar. Why?
Tell me what you refer to when you say this black woman in the jungle.
Oh, I mean, this woman was the woman that set the standards. This woman didn't die because of disease. She didn't have any hospitals in the jungle. She didn't have any doctors. She didn't have any medicine. That's why Hippocrates said that your medicine should be your food, or your food should be your medicine, because the African people didn't have a doctor. They didn't need him, because they didn't have any of the substance that would violate the biology of the individual. So how long did they live? Do you and I know how long those Africans lived in the forests of Africa before the chemical people came?
What we're doing, and I think it's the most important thing that I can be doing right now. There are so many people who are sick, and if this can help them, people have to know about this. It's fantastic that I get to share this with my family, that we're doing this together, and that we both feel so passionately about it.
She was on over 40 different medicines. She had been on methotrexate and Plaquenil, one of those which nearly destroyed her vision. All the potent anti-inflammatories, the Vioxx and the Celebrex, and was on all sorts of painkillers and all sorts of antibiotics. She had classic steroid toxicity. Her face was the shape of a moon because there's a lot of swelling that occurs in the face. At the age of 16, was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and that evolved into a lupus condition, a diagnosis of interstitial cystitis, an autoimmune disorder. Bedridden 4 years. Her mother thought she would never survive.
I went to talk to William as a friend and as a doctor about his experience with patients and how they used cannabis. Seeing what the juicing did for me, using it in this form, was so significant. It changed my life. About 4 to 6 weeks after I started on juicing every day, I had no more back pain. I didn't need pain pills. I felt the best I ever had.
A lot of people think cannabis and pot are not medicine. I had stumbled on an article in Scientific American, December 2004. They had an article on marijuana as the brain's own marijuana, and they introduced the idea that the body produces compounds that are very similar to those found in marijuana or cannabis. Cannabis actually goes upstream. It provides feedback from the postsynaptic nerve to the presynaptic nerve, which was unheard of in neurochemistry. I mean, all neurotransmissions were unidirectional, and all of a sudden, swimming against the force of that are these little cannabinoid molecules that tie the whole system together. The phytocannabinoids from this plant augment the body's attempt to restore and increase function to a normal level. So it mimics the regulatory system of cellular physiology. And recently, the Food and Drug Administration has approved of CBD, which is a cannabinoid like THC, one of 80 cannabinoids. The federal patent compares vitamin C, vitamin E, and CBD, or cannabidiol. CBD turns out to be more potent than either of those two.
The thing that I warn my patients of is if you're going to be juicing this flower and this leaf, and you're going to be doing this high-dose, non-psychoactive cannabinoid dietary approach, please do not heat it.
When you heat cannabis, you make it psychoactive, which for a large part of the community, the psychoactivity of a plant is a measure of its medical quality. but it's really quite the inverse.
If you heat or age cannabis in any way, you're destroying some of the medicinal properties of it.
To use the plant effectively, we have to use it the way it evolved over 34 million years, which is raw, because when it's raw, the THC is bound up as THC acid. It requires aging, drying, so as a hunter-gatherer, we gather this plant and we notice, wow, as this plant ages, it changes character and suddenly has a psychoactive effect.
I think that's the most exciting area of cannabis research, is looking at non-psychoactive cannabinoids.
Because if you do heat it, you'll decarboxylate the THC acid, and you're going to have 600 milligrams of THC acid with the CBD acid. You would be unconscious probably for the better part of the week.
Between heating the plant, whether that's in a sucker, a cookie, a baked good, a butter, vaporized, smoked, all of those techniques convert THC acid, which is non-psychoactive, into THC and provide you with that 10 milligram dose. But if you eat the plant raw, then THC acid is the way it's found in the plant. It's not psychoactive. The juicing allows you to get up to the 500 to 600 milligrams, which is 60 times more than you could tolerate if it was heated.
This treatment is not psychoactive. People don't have to be stoned when they take it. They can take it and go to work. They can take it and play with their kids. It's hard for me to understand laws against something like green leaf therapy and to think that prednisone is legal.
We're still fighting the stigma of marijuana back from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Intriguing answers started appearing in the early 90s when researchers pinpointed receptors in the brain and the body that bind with the cannabinoids. Receptors can be described as locks on the surface of a cell, and when the correct key binds with the correct lock or receptor, it opens the door and delivers messages. Sometimes the message is that the body is feeling pain. Other times the message may be that there's an invader and the immune system must attack.
Scientists located two receptors, cannabinoid receptors, one called the CB1 receptor, mainly in the brain, and the other is the CB2 receptor, which is mainly in cells of the immune system.
The CB1 receptors are extremely abundant in the brain, but they're also found all over the body in the major organs, the heart, the liver, kidneys, and pancreas. As the CB2 receptor can act like a target for the cannabinoids. Once they bind with the receptor, they can tell the cancer cell to die.
So basically telling the cells basically to commit suicide, and that's what they do. And we demonstrated that that would be the mechanism by which the cannabinoids can kill the cancer, and therefore it can be used effectively as an anti-cancer agent.
Dr. Nagar-Katti and his researchers were able to eradicate almost 100% of the cancer in test tubes. But they were skeptical they would see similar results when they moved on to tumors in mice.
To our surprise, we found that almost 25 to 30% of the mice completely rejected the tumor. They were completely cured. And in addition, we found that the remaining mice also, there was a significant reduction in the volume or the size of the tumors as well.
The lab results have been so promising that Dr. Nagar-Katti is beginning clinical trials with leukemia patients.